Ever had a bad day at the office? Been living for the weekend or counting down the hours until closing time? Like most people, whether you love or hate your job, we've all played out this scenario before. But for the majority of us who are privileged enough to have a steady income, our lives are not all that bad. We're generally safe, well looked after, with decent pay, and we even get holidays. However, there's no debate that some jobs are far worse than others. But if you really think you've got it that bad, strap yourself in, because today on His and Hers History, we take a look back at some of the worst jobs in history. Hello and welcome to the His and Hers History podcast. I'm your host Aaron and this is my co-host Stephanie.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Doing well?
Yep.
Have you gotten over your animal experiments from last week?
Have I gotten over them?
Well, the poor dolphins.
You were the traumatized one last week,
I was.
not me.
So? I said at the end of last week's episode, I think we've done enough animal cruelty.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to move on to
human cruelty.
Human cruelty,
yeah.
That's right. Before I begin, if you are new to this podcast, let me catch you up to speed. Each week, either myself or Steph bring a historical topic to the podcast, either a person, place or event, and we present said historical topic. The only catch is the host presenting knows all the facts and the host listening knows nothing at all. By doing this, we can have a light-hearted look at the past with genuine reactions, and you guys can laugh along with us as we dissect and potentially ruin history. Now, before I get into the worst jobs in history, on my list of the worst jobs, I thought I might ask you, Steph, what's the worst job you've ever had? Now, if you need some time to think, I'm happy to provide my worst job experience while you have a think of yours.
Yeah, go on. I'd love to hear your
Okay,
worst.
so picture a young Aaron, a chubby 14, 15-year-old, I can't quite remember. My first job was in a butcher's, the local butcher's in the town I grew up. And one of my jobs there was to mince the fat. So all the offcuts of meat that were thrown into a tub and they were stored in the cool room for a week or so. And my job at the end of the week was to bring that out and put it through the mincer and mince all the fat and grind it down, and then it gets shipped away and they do whatever with it. I've got no idea what they did with it, but they needed it. So anyway, I was mincing the fat one night, a Friday night, and I found it weird because as I started to mince the fat and got towards the centre, it started to get really warm. I was like, this fat's been in the cool room for a week. It should not be warm, but I persisted. And as I clawed away at the fat, putting it through, it got warmer and warmer, and eventually I burst open the centre with my hands and a pile of maggots came out.
Delicious.
They're infested with maggots, so that was disgusting. I nearly spewed on the spot, but I had to continue to mince it because they don't really care if there's maggots in it because no one's eating it. But I distinctly remember that, and that was disgusting. And that's the reason I thought of this episode, actually. Thinking of the worst jobs, because I was thinking about that last week. What about you? What's your worst job experience?
Well, you'd think my worst job was like...
retail or something like that?
Well, yeah, that was my worst job. But I did work at a burger place where I had to like... clean the plates, and they would always, like, I know you hate cleaning the sink out when there's stuff at the bottom.
Oh yeah, I always think of that meme of that alien. It's like when you touch something dirty in the sink and he's like making that face.
That's pretty much what that job was, but I sort of preferred it to being out with the people. So.
Waiting tables and stuff.
Yeah, I sort of, that was like cleaning the sink became sort of like a break for me.
A break from people.
Pretty much.
Fair enough.
So I prefer disgusting stuff over human interaction.
I think I win.
Yeah,
potentially for the worst job. Although that only happened once, so it wasn't like it was a recurring thing. Now, before I get into job number one on my list, I'm going to be asking you a few questions after each job.
Joy.
So you don't have to do much thinking. They're pretty low. What's it? Not low intelligence or low brow. That's the word I was going to use. But like, they're not hard questions. So the questions would be: would you have done this job? And would this job still be allowed today, in your eyes? Without further ado, job number one. The Nomenclator, aka the human iPhone. Our first occupation doesn't take the crown for the most dangerous or vile, but it certainly ranks as one of the worst jobs in history because of how boredom-inducing it sounds. A nomenclator in ancient Europe was someone tasked with writing down anything and everything for their master. From sun up to sundown, every conversation had, every item in need of remembering, and every thought that should cross a person's mind, these guys had to write it down. So in the modern world, just think of your iPhone was a person. Think of how you treat your iPhone, how you speak to it, and how it pretty much does all your remembering for you. That's what a nomenclator was. And I've seen how you treat your iPhones. I would not want to be your nomenclator.
No, I don't think I'd be very kind to mine. So it's basically like, what times was this? Medieval sort of era?
What did I say? Yeah, around that time, yeah.
So like a medieval Instagram, basically.
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
So why were these people so important that they needed everything?
Exactly. I've got a little bit written down here, but I'll get to that later. Exactly. Sure, it doesn't sound that bad, but imagine who you could be working for. It could be some alcoholic nutcase that is always going to parties and getting smashed and making you write down every interaction he has at the party with other equally smashed people. And imagine, like you said, how important these people that hired nomenclators must have thought they were. They would have had the most arrogant and unlikable people. That's right, I need every thought that pops into my head to be recorded because I'm so amazing. I don't know if you listen to a lot of people's conversations just casually, Steph, but they're not exactly hugely enlightening. So, yeah, would you have done this job back in the day, in medieval times?
Probably.
You would have? You would have been comfortable doing that?
Yeah. I think I would have paid pretty well.
I think it paid pretty measly.
But you would have got lodgings and food and
and that's what I was sort of getting at with this.
Got to talk to the other medieval iPhones.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's why I sort of put this on the list because it's not exactly dangerous or disgusting or anything, but it just would have been boring and so mind-numbing. But you could probably do it.
Probably could have started the first tabloid magazine from that job. You would have learnt so much goss.
I thought you were going to say tablet, like you had to chisel it into a tablet.
Well, that
instead
would
of
be
writing
horrible.
it down. That would make it even worse.
Yeah.
So would this job still be allowed today?
Well, it is. It's just taken over by technology.
And technically it's like a secretary, isn't it?
Actually, I was watching a TikTok the other day. Did I show you that one about how the people that do the transcripts for law proceedings, how they have to write?
Oh, no, you didn't.
It's not a real typewriter or a computer. It's like a weird device that predicts what you're going to write. It's got only 8 buttons on the top and 8 on the bottom, and that's how you write everything that they've said. It's a faster way of typing.
There you go. I didn't know that.
So it's that's the bottom.
I just thought they were gun typists. And
no, yeah. Well, they are.
Oh, well, they are. Yeah, true. That could rank as one of the worst jobs for me personally.
No,
I'd hate
that job.
Job number 2, the Sin Eater, aka the Get Out of Jail Free card. Besides sounding like the most epic goth metal band ever, Sin Eaters were weirdly necessary occupation in the eyes of 19th century Europe. The job of the Sin Eater was, you guessed it, to eat the sins of those who had passed on. The theory was that if someone was to absorb your sins before you were buried, you could ascend to heaven, no questions asked. Hence the Get Out of Jail Free card. So this is a bit of a cop-out, this one.
Okay, so if they're eating a body, I presume?
I'll get to that. That's pretty gross. That would be horrific.
I thought that's what was
like this job. Doesn't sound that bad, but that makes it sound worse. No, they're metaphorically eating their sins or whatever the phrase you want. They're not actually eating the people.
Okay, let's.
But I didn't interpret it that way. But I'm so glad you did because that's an interesting way of looking at it. So living family members would prepare a bowl of food and drink and then pass it over the body of the dead relative to the sin eater, who would then devour the sin-infested gruel for a measly sum of money. The dead relative was then free of any and all wrongdoing over their lifetime, and their sins were passed on to the sin eater. It's worth noting that a sin eater must have had the lowest opinion of themselves if they were okay with apparently taking on the sins of others, just for a few coins and a quick meal.
Or
yes,
they were. Do you want me to say this?
Business savvy? Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, or just they were probably atheists or agnostic, and they just didn't believe in anything.
I'm glad your mind went there because that's where my mind went as well. Now, depending on how you look at things, this could be seen as the worst job of the whole episode because you're taking on the sins of people, and if you're religious, that's horrible. You're taking on all these horrible sins and you're not going to go to heaven. Or it could be seen as an easy way to make a quick bit of coin. So would you have done this job?
Well, it depends.
Yeah, it does depend. Now, I was thinking when I was writing, I was like, I absolutely would do this job because I'm not religious and I don't believe in sin and stuff like that. There's bad people and they do bad things, but I don't believe in sin. I would have done it as like a second job. So I would have had a job and then on the way home, I'm just going to stop by, do a few sin eaters Just drop in, hey, I'm here for the Sin Eater. Get a quick meal, a bit of coin
Yeah,
on the way home.
I was going to say also it's like the biggest scam. They get a meal as well.
I'm not sure the meal would have been great, but...
Well, maybe the better, you could say, look, the better the meal, the better I'm going to be able to absorb
listen,
these
if
sins.
you give me that roast, I'm taking on those sins.
Yeah.
I'll take your sins. You're not even dead. I'll take them on. But also, it's like a massive cop-out because it's like you're supposed to live your life in a nice way and treat people well and stuff, and then all of a sudden... You've been a horrible person when you die. I'll just get a Sin Eater and I'm right to go.
Mm-hmm.
So
sort of like what ancient Egyptians did as well. They sort of scammed the system by having masks on or something. I can't remember, but when they had their judgment in the afterlife,
that's right.
They could sort of pay their way out.
And to me, again, I'm not religious, but it sort of makes me feel like if I was religious, that the religion or what I'm following is meaningless because I can just give it all up at the end and I'm right to go. But that job was usually left to super poor people and stuff, as you can imagine, and they were sort of shunned from society because they were riddled with sin, supposedly. Would this job be allowed today? Yeah, I'd take it on in a heartbeat, as I said. A little bit of coin on the side, free meal. Would this job be allowed today?
I'm sure there are probably people
in some
doing
shape or form, potentially.
Yeah. Whether they think they're actually doing it or they're just scamming, who knows? But I am absolutely certain that in some way, shape or form, there is someone doing this.
They do that thing where they put the sin into an item or something, like you see on those conjuring movies and stuff like that. But who knows? Job number 3, a punkawalla, aka the human fan. Much like the first 2 jobs, the punkawalla wasn't necessarily a bad job in terms of being dangerous, vile or otherwise. However, it definitely wouldn't inspire the workers to any great heights. As I alluded to in the intro, the task of the punkawalla was literally to be a human fan. During the time where the British ruled over India and Pakistan, the idea of a ceiling fan was just coming into vogue, a useful idea for a place so hot and humid. However, these fans were not yet motorised like the fans that we know today. As a result, these men would spend their entire day operating the controls of the fan to keep it pumping cool air down on royals and dignitaries. This may not have been a physically demanding job to begin with, however, hour upon hour of the repeated activity, the body would surely start to break down. Also, the constant thought that your only purpose in that moment was to keep some rich, pompous idiot cool for a tiny sum of money, all the while destroying your back, probably made it pretty bad.
So they did get paid. I was assuming this is more like slavery.
Well, according to what I read, they did get paid somewhat.
But this is the British in India.
Yeah, well, that's what my next piece is. We're in sync today. You're just on this. We are just knocking it out of the park because this job goes back even further into history. We've all seen the cartoons of slaves fanning their masters with giant palm leaves, but at least a punkawalla got paid. It may not have been very much, but it was better than nothing, I'm willing to bet. So, yeah, you're right. There were slaves that probably did it for nothing and actually did it by hand with the palm leaf. But these guys, I think, got paid.
See, that job doesn't sound so bad until you probably do something like that. Because I remember I've got a friend at work whose dad used to punish him by telling him he could either have a smack on the bottom or he could hold a book over his head for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And he obviously chose holding the book.
Yeah.
And he said by the second minute he was dying.
Yeah. It is quite hard, yeah.
Just a weird motion
holding
for
the position,
a long time would really wreak havoc
I'd take
on the body.
I'd take the smack on the bum.
I think
I'm a sin eater. I'll take the smack.
Why?
Would you have done this job?
Well, if I had no choice, these jobs, I don't think these people had much choice.
You're probably right. They're probably either forced into it or they had no other line of work. Yeah, that's right.
But as a job choice, no, I'd probably rather be fanned.
Well, that's unfair. I'm not putting a choice in there. Like, just put yourself in the position like that job's offered to you and say you don't have any money.
Yeah.
Or life's pretty grim. Would you do that job? Or is that just I'd take my chances?
No, I would probably do that job.
You'd probably do that? Because that's what I was thinking.
I wouldn't be very good at it, though.
Yeah, you'd probably muck up the controls or something. But what the hell's going on here? Why am I not cool? I'm so sorry. It's my first day. But yeah, because the repeated activity, I'm not sure what the device looked like. We might have to look it up later, actually. But whatever it was, it probably like something repetitive. And like you were saying before, with your friend, with that holding the book above their head, all I can think of is I helped my father put some pavers down at a school one day, and it was really repetitive. And at the start, I was like, this is kind of enjoyable. Like, I've got a pattern going here. And then after 2 hours or so, I was like, oh my God, I'm so sick of this. And like, I was doing the same movement over and over again. My hands are getting sore. Maybe I'm a softie, but
a bit of a sook.
Yeah, a bit of a sook. But I sort of thought about that. I was like, that day in, day out, every day, would drive you mad.
Mm-hmm.
Would this job still be allowed today?
Look, there are much better options. So
that's right.
Probably not, but who knows?
But I mean,
given the right amount of money, someone would probably do it.
And there's probably labour-intensive jobs similar to that where you're moving your body in the same way over and over again, and people do those jobs. So there's every chance it could still be allowed today. Yeah, the pay still wouldn't be great, but it is what it is. Moving on, job number 4, the whipping boy, aka the whipping boy. You have Sorry?
Okay.
Yeah, you have no doubt heard of the phrase whipping boy.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean, Steph, to you?
Oh.
You haven't thought about it, have you?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think about it either until I read this. Like, whipping boy.
Is it someone that is it someone that takes the blame for something?
Very, very good. Off the top of your head, not bad. So the whipping boy, which is usually used when someone is the constant target of harassment or abuse of some form or another. Well, this phrase goes back as far as the 15th and 16th century and was a horrible job. However, it probably had its perks too. During this time, royals were seen as divine and connected to the heavens, and as a result, were free from any form of physical punishment from any and all indiscretions.
Oh yes, I see where this is going.
However, any little princes that were misbehaving had to have some form of consequences for their actions. Thus, the whipping boy was created. The whipping boy was usually of a high-ranking family or a family of noble birth. This boy was the prince's only childhood friend, and they would do the majority of things together. Sounds like a pretty sweet gig, right? Which I'm sure it probably was at some times. Like,
this is sadistic. I see exactly where this is going.
Yeah, well, you can sort of see. But like, you would have admit, like, you're the best mate with the prince. Probably did some cool things. You went, I don't know, shooting and riding and doing whatever. Well, it might have been for the most part. However, any time that the little king in waiting fell foul of the rules, the punishment was doled out to the whipping boy. This was done in the hopes that the young prince would see that his best and only friend was being physically abused, and that this would help him stop whatever undesired behaviour he was partaking in. In a messed up kind of way, you might see how this could work. However, if the prince is a little narcissistic sociopath, then you are going to have a very sad childhood indeed. As we know, there's no shortage of kings in history who fit this profile of the narcissistic sociopath. So the whipping boy, would you have done this job?
No, I'm a girl, so
yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, technically yes, but put yourself in the shoes of, would you have done this job?
Well, I don't think they had a choice either, Aaron.
You're probably right.
The benefits. Oh, do the benefits?
Well, I mean,
outweigh the consequences.
Obviously, like, we're implying there's a choice here. I don't know how the selection was, but you'd have to look at the little prince and go, right, are they a nice person? Okay.
Well, you probably wouldn't get a choice, but yes, it would definitely depend on what sort of person the prince was.
That's right. So the prince, okay, he's a nice guy. I'll be happy to be the whipping boy, and occasionally he does something wrong and I get whipped.
Like rats' heads or something, or like murdering little animals. You're not going to want to.
I'm not sure that would have even been bad behaviour for a prince. They're probably like, prince being a prince.
I think it'd still be psycho.
Anyway, if the kid was clearly unhinged, you don't want that job because your back is going to be severely scarred from whipping.
Yes.
But yeah. Would this job be allowed today? Could you picture this job in schools?
In schools?
Yeah.
No.
Now, Gavin, you've been a naughty little boy. You know what we're going to have to do to Bob? Please no. Whoosh, and he starts whipping Bob.
Whipping Bob.
Would this job be allowed today?
No.
Yeah, that's a solid no. You could not have this. That's, That's the first one where it's like legitimately, no, you could not have that. Job number 5, the vomit collector, a.k.a. the slip and slide waiter.
Ew.
Did you like that one?
Yeah, that's gross.
I thought that was pretty clever. We've all had a heavy night of drinking or a bad meal that has resulted in us chucking up whatever we have in our guts at the time. Usually, we are the ones that have to clean up our own mess. And we certainly didn't do it deliberately. Well, in ancient Rome, they did things a little differently. There are a few myths surrounding the goings-on of royal banquets, including the use of vomit rooms, but unfortunately they were not that civilised, it would seem. The job of the vomit collector was to come in and clean up all the vomit from the partygoers at these large banquets. Why is there so much vomiting going on, Steph, I hear you ask? Well, in ancient Rome, they loved to indulge in excess, and that included food, of course. The partygoers would eat until they were chock-a-block full and then vomit it all up in order to fit more food in. This act was most common at the Bacchanal, I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is described as a wild drunken party. You would assume that these vomiting sessions would be somewhat organised and that they would vomit into easily transportable containers. But no, the partygoers would just straight up vomit on the floor. So you can imagine the state of the room at the end of the evening as drunk Romans slip and slide around on the floor, vomiting on every surface in sight. The vomit collector would have to have their work cut out for them, especially at Caligula's parties, who we covered in one of our early episodes. You can imagine what his parties would have been like. But that was their job. They had to go in and clean up all the vomit and dispose of it. Would you have done this job?
No.
Too gross for you?
I would not have, yes. Too gross. Way too gross.
It's basically like a cleaner, I guess.
Yeah, but it would just stink.
No, it would have been gross.
You would smell like it all the time.
And I mean, like, at a party like that, when there's lots of drinking and eating going on, people just vomiting, the smells that would be just horrific. And the fact you'd just be sliding around and spew. Why didn't they just spew into containers? I found that really strange. They spewed on the floor and on tables and
They
stuff
wanted to support the economy. The vomit cleaners needed something to do.
I guess, yeah, it's a weird way of looking at it. Would this job still be allowed today?
Well, it is, absolutely.
Pretty much, yeah. If you're a cleaner and you're at a
club or like a festival.
Yeah. You go to the toilets and spew everywhere, yeah. You probably would.
Those poor people have to clean up like porta potties.
Oh, yeah. Again, I mentioned last week that we watched that Woodstock 99 documentary. Mm-hmm. I saw the porta potties in that. Oh, my God.
I feel so sorry
I would not want to have to clean them. Pretty gross. Job number 6, the leech collector, a.k.a. bog bandits. The medical profession has come a long way in terms of how effective the treatments we use are. Most of the time we get handed a box or a bottle with a little label on it and we don't even read it and we just take it because we know it's probably going to fix any issues that we have. Well, in medieval Europe, the medical profession required a bit more of a hands-on approach than what we're used to today. In medieval Europe, the process of bloodletting was used for a wide range of medical purposes with little to no success. One of these methods included applying leeches to the skin that would then suck the blood from the patient. I believe there's some science behind it, but don't hold me to that. Okay? But I think leeches, I have heard of leeches something.
I still use leeches for something.
I have heard something about that. But we'll have to research that.
There's some sort of benefit to it, and there was a reason, but from what I understand, they probably used it way too much for pretty much everything. Yeah,
so imagine going to a medieval doctor, and I'm just picturing someone who comes up to me, he's like, yeah, I've got a cramp in my calf. He's like, leeches, here you go. What? Leeches fix everything. There you go. Bit of bloodletting, but I just have a cramp. Take the leeches. See ya. They just used it for everything, apparently. Nevertheless, the leeches needed to be collected for the doctors somehow. A leech collector would wade out into the murky waters of a nearby bog or pond with their legs exposed, slosh around a bit and wait for the little devils to attach themselves. Then they were picked off and placed in a bucket and taken to the local doctor. If you're comfortable with water and slimy creatures sucking your blood, then this might have been the job for you. Would you have done this job, Steph?
Okay, so back in the day, absolutely I would have gone, yep, that's an easy job. But now knowing what we know with like medical science, awful job.
Absolutely not.
You're gonna have like exposed cuts.
Yeah, infections and stuff like that.
Infections were a killer. No way would I do that, but I may have done it back then.
Yeah, but it's like with most of these jobs. Oh, do you mind a little infection on your legs and living, or no infections and dying from hunger?
But at that time, well, I guess hunger is probably the closest way to kill you at that time.
We'd probably be surprised at what jobs we would do if where our options were very limited, yeah. So would this job be allowed today if we needed leeches for whatever reason?
Probably.
I suppose you could still do it, yeah.
Yeah,
if you really want to.
Better way to do it.
Absolutely, but
may still be a job. Not one I would choose.
Not one that you'd want to pursue. Job 7, the fuller, aka piss pounder. Do you like that?
Oh my!
What do you think a piss pounder might do?
The fuller. No idea. I have
this one was like, I don't understand where it gets its name, but here we go. Ever been camping and gone for a quick wee out in the bush, and during the process you've got a little bit of wee on your foot? A little bit annoying. Yeah, a little bit annoying, but not a big deal, right? Well, the job of the fuller took this unpleasant experience to a whole new level. Hence the piss pounder name. During the Middle Ages, wool was used for making clothes and was highly sought after. It was warm and comfortable and served many purposes. However, there was a slight issue with sheep's wool. The natural oil that was found inside the wool made the task of harvesting, carding, spinning and weaving very easy, but the wool that resulted was coarse and easily frayed. So they needed to add another step to ensure that the wool would be soft and pliable.
Oh, yes.
You can see where this is going.
Ryan,
yes.
The jack of all trades liquid.
Wow, what?
I think it's been used for a lot of things.
What do you use it for? I mean, peeing on jellyfish stings is all I know of.
Actually, do you know it's not the way to do it?
Really?
Yeah, it's not.
So that's a myth, isn't it?
It sure is.
What about what's that? Tinea. Apparently, if you pee on your feet and you've got tinea, it fixes it. Really? Again, another rumor. I don't know.
Okay, so it was used for, well, at the moment, deer pee is used to hide hunters' scent when they're...
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I've heard of that.
It's been used for teeth whitening.
Teeth whitening?
Apparently.
Wow.
It has been used... to make leather soft. That's probably what I was thinking about.
And that's similar to what they do here with the fuller.
It was also used to make gunpowder.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So they get shot. Oh, God, I've been wounded. Oh, it smells. Just insult to injury.
Disgusting.
I've also heard, I was listening to a podcast this week, actually, and it said that in parts of America where there's mountain lions, they're starting to invade, like, where people are living, residents and stuff like that. And they said if you've got cats, they'll come looking for the cats or whatever. And a good way to get the mountain lions away is to actually buy lion's pee and poo, and you can put it in your garden. And because it's the smell of like a bigger alpha cat, the mountain lions stay away.
Right.
Apparently, yeah. Crazy the times we live in. Back to the piss pounding. So the wool, it needed an extra step so that it would become soft and pliable. The easiest way to do this was to apply an alkaline solution to the wool, and the most abundant and cheapest option at the time was, of course, stale urine. This is where the fuller comes in. The job of the fuller was to collect the stale urine from toilets around the towns and cities and bring it back to their place of work. Once they had collected enough, they would fill up a tub of stale urine and place a freshly woven cloth in the stew. The final step was to stomp on the wool for a time until the oils had been eroded. Think of this as like a perverted winemaker crushing his grapes with his feet, but instead of grapes, it's random people's urine from across the town.
Disgusting.
Would you have done this job?
No.
I could do this job. I reckon I could do that.
I don't think you could.
The smell, it's like anything. You get used to the smell, I think.
How did they make sure it wasn't mixed with anything else as well?
I don't think they cared that much. They just went round to homes and stuff and collected pee, gallons and gallons of it, apparently, and brought it back. And
disgusting.
Yeah. Would this job be allowed today?
No. Well, who knows?
I suppose if it
I would feel more comfortable with if it was like animals pee than humans pee.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because animals' excrement comes in a bit later. But we'll talk more about that. Yeah. But yeah, I reckon I could probably do this job. And actually, while I was researching this job, it made me think of another story. While I was working at the butcher's when I was a young fellow, they had to clean out the septic at the butcher's, okay? And there was a man there who's had the truck and the tube and he was sucking out all the poo and stuff. So that's where, if anyone doesn't know, septic's where they keep poo and urine. And I was leaving work out the front of the butcher's and walking down the main street, and he was coming back to complete this job, and he walked past me, and 10 metres before I even passed him, I could smell the poo on him, and it was so strong, my eyes watered, and I thought, he must want to get paid a lot of money to do that, because it was like in his skin. It was like the smell of poo and urine was in him, and
I can imagine, because like when I worked at a burger place, all my clothes stunk of that.
That's what I mean, and it was like in his.
He would have to like live in a separate building from his partner.
I thought that he would have like this little shack down the back of his house where have a shower and like wash it, and he'd hang them out to dry and stuff. Yeah.
That's disgusting.
And even that wouldn't be enough, I don't think.
Poor guy.
So that could easily feature on this list as one of the worst jobs. But anyway, that was the piss pounder, which I've coined, aka the fuller. Job 8, groom of the stool, aka brown nose. This job takes being a brown nose to a whole other level. I mentioned earlier while talking about the whipping boy that kings were seen as to have the divine right and placed at the level of the gods. Well, it turns out this applies to their bumhole as well. For some reason, they weren't allowed to wipe their own bums after a poo, and so they had the groom of the stool to do it for them. I don't care how important you think you are. I don't want someone wiping my bum. That's a job for me. It's a job I'd much rather do myself if I was putting myself in that situation. I don't want some random dude wiping my bum for me. What about you?
Well, it's not a random dude, by the way.
No, it's probably someone.
This job. This is like
you know about this one?
high-ranking job. This is like
correct.
The second in command of the kingdom.
I don't care how high-ranking it is, though. Gross.
Well, he's probably never had to wipe his own bum.
Yeah, he's probably, I guess if you've grown up,
that's... It's probably weird that he looks down upon people that need to do it themselves.
That's true. I didn't think of it like that.
Also, the groom of the stool.
Groom of the stool.
The groom of the stool is the person that's going to be able to manipulate you. You're seeing you at your most...
vulnerable.
Yeah, vulnerable. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. I didn't think of it like that. That's evil. Anyway, despite what you might think, this job was highly sought after, like you said. Unlike the vast majority of occupations that we've spoken about today, this job was usually left to high-level aristocrats. But in saying that, you're still wiping another man's bumhole. Prestigious or not, it's not a glorious job. The groom of the stool was also responsible for not only wiping their bum, but fetching and preparing the king's pooing stool. I'm not sure that's the name of it, but that's what I'm going to call it. Then once the king had finished their business, the groom of the stool had to examine and monitor the poo to check for any health issues that may have gone undetected. Another requirement was performing an enema should His Royal Highness be a little blocked up. Talk about a shit job.
Yeah.
I just had to throw that.
I like that one, yes.
Yeah. But would you have done this job?
Absolutely.
You'd be happy wiping a grown man's bum?
If I was a climber, if I was someone who wanted to...
Yeah, I guess so.
Get into a higher level and get my family's prestige up.
You've got to...
Absolutely.
Yeah, you've got to get in amongst...
Got to wipe some bums.
That's it. You've got to wipe some royal bums, perform some royal enemas. I'm feeling a bit blocked up there. Here you go, your Royal Highness. And it all just comes out.
Oh, by the way, my daughter's available for marriage.
Oh, thank you. Oh, this is like splatting on his face or something. Yeah, glorious. It wouldn't be great. Would this job be allowed today? So there's still royal families? The Queen? Oh, no.
No, maybe.
Lizzie, no. Please, no.
Well, in a medical sense, yes.
Yeah, that's true. Nurses do it. Mm. So I guess, technically.
They're not...
I'm going to start calling nurses groom of the stool. Oh. Where's my groom of the stool? Excuse me. Sorry, nurse.
There's this old weird guy in the nursing home.
Yeah, that'd be sad, actually.
Groom of the stool.
Groom of the stool, please. But I'm sure at that age...
It's like a female nurse. No, I request a groom.
And at that age, no bowel movement is going to be pleasant. Mm-mm. So groom of the stool or not.
Well, even back then, the diet that kings had...
Yeah, it would have been rough. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking either super hard or super sloppy. No in between. Too. Yeah, very stanky. Job 9, matchstick girl, a.k.a. Fossy Jaw. The making of matchsticks in London's factories doesn't sound entirely like the worst job in the world. Certainly not the one that would fit on this list. From the outside, it sounds like a tedious and repetitive job, not unlike the human fans I mentioned earlier. Which it was, however, it wasn't actually the task of dipping the match heads into the phosphorus solution that was the bad part. It was what happened after years of working this job that was the horrible part. After several years of working at this job, women began to suffer from a condition known as phossy jaw. This was as a result of inhaling the phosphorus substance used to tip the match heads. Symptoms included the gums beginning to form abscesses with foul-smelling pus pouring out, and after even longer, the jaw would begin to have an eerie glow that could easily identify a matchstick girl on site, so someone who'd been working for years. It's a bit concerning with this particular job because going into it you think it's a relatively safe and boring job when in actual fact it's slowly destroying you from the inside out. So if you look up pictures of phossy jaw on Google, yeah, it's very unpleasant what happened to them. So some of them, they just form like massive pussy things.
Ooh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them, their gums and jawline eroded completely.
Oh,
And then, and then some had added the phosphorus infected their gums and began to glow.
Yeah.
Like in the dark, which is crazy.
Oh my goodness. That reminds me, and apologies if you're going to mention this, but the radium girls, sorry.
What's that?
Have you heard of those?
No, they're not in my list. But
okay. So they were female factory workers that were working on, I believe, clocks. And to make these clocks glow in the dark, they used radium.
Radium, is that like used today? It's obviously like a dangerous chemical, but it's not used today. Is that like one of those things that like paint used to have lead in them sort of thing?
Yeah, I believe it's uranium.
Yeah, that sounds right, but it's like highly toxic too.
Highly. And to make the numbers nice and clean, they used to lick their paintbrushes.
Oh no.
To make it into
tip,
a fine
yeah.
point.
Oh my God.
And then they would dip it into the radium paint.
So what happened to them?
Let me see if I can find some images for you.
But I'm probably tipping a similar thing where they oh my God, yeah.
And because they were licking it,
it's getting into their system and stuff.
Yeah, so very much the same.
They're sort of similar, yeah. Phossy jaw sort of eroded the flesh by the looks of it, whereas that looks like it sort of makes everything bulbousy.
I believe they actually glued in the dark.
Yeah, so probably similar to the phossy jaw. And also reminds me, I thought about putting on this list, but most people know about it. Like when they say mad as a hatter, hatters had mercury in their hat making, which I'm going to look into that a bit further because why did they need mercury? But anyway, yeah, apparently it drove them insane. So I could have had that on the list, but I thought, nah, everyone knows about that. So yeah, that's phossy jaw. Very unpleasant. Job number 10, the tanner or tanner, aka, I didn't come up with a name for this because I couldn't think of one, but the tanner. During my research, this job kept coming up as one of the most disgusting jobs, so I had to include this as my piece de la resistance. The tanner's job was to help preserve the hides of cattle, pigs, among other animals, for a multitude of reasons. Doesn't sound too bad just yet, but the process of being a tanner was nothing short of revolting. The process is as follows. First, the hides were soaked in a giant pit of limes to soften their hair and tissues. Not that bad, but still weird and probably an unpleasant thing to do. I'm surprised that the fuller didn't somehow come into play here as a work colleague and come and stomp on the hides or something.
I mean, can you really touch lime? Should you be touching lime?
I don't know. Yeah, I suppose you can touch lime.
I don't think you can.
I'm sure you can, but not. You shouldn't be exposed to it over a long period of time. Maybe. Yeah. So anyway, they did that. Following this process, they removed any hair or fat that was left, and they had to do this by hand, so that would have been quite sloppy and disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's increasing in its disgustingness. So now that the hides are clean, they were thrown into a pit of water and, Steph, you mentioned it earlier.
Oh,
dog feces.
Oh,
that's right. You mentioned animals. So I was thrown into a pit of water and dog feces to further clean and soften the hides. It's worth noting that these pits were left fermenting between batches to keep them in prime condition.
Finally, makes so much sense. Let's clean
animal hides with dog poo. Yeah. Disgusting.
It doesn't smell very good.
No, it would smell horrific. Finally, the hides were removed and cleaned once more, ready to be bought by some savage out in the world. It is said that the tanner was one of the most vile-smelling humans that you could ever come in contact with. And after this job description, I can see why. And that's what made me actually think of that the guy that's cleaned the septic because it was in his skin.
Yeah.
It was in his hair. It was everything. I could just smell him. You can imagine what this guy smelled like. It's worth noting in America, in the census, in like the 1800s, there was heaps of tanners, so they were quite like popular, and they had to live on like the edge of town and stuff like that, and for obvious reasons because it would have been
wouldn't want to live
revolting. Would you have done this job?
No, disgusting.
You wouldn't have?
I can't. I have a weak stomach when it comes to things like this.
This one, I'd probably stay away from that. Do you think this job would be allowed today?
I think it is, but maybe not in... surely they've come a bit further. Yeah,
like obviously they have different ways of doing it now, but that's easily relegated, that one, to never being done again. And I forgot to ask you, would you do the Fossy Jaw, the matchstick girl? I forgot to ask you at the end of that one. Would you do that job?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have known the dangers.
I wouldn't have known the dangers, but absolutely not with
unless your first day you rock up and you sit down beside Susan and you're like, hey Susan, she's like, hello, and she's just got no gums and no mouth. You'd be like, what's up with that? And then you'd quit the next day. So that's it. That's the 10 worst jobs in history, or some of the worst jobs in history. Now, this is again one of those episodes where I could have done another episode, or maybe even 3, but I'll put a few honourable mentions in there as well, some that I didn't put in there. So we've got the ship surgeon. So that's worse than a regular surgeon because of the conditions. They were out at sea for long periods of time, stagnant water, other diseases going on, Lyme disease. What's it called when you don't have enough vitamins? Scurvy, stuff like that. Apparently the conditions were horrific on boats and stuff like that. Soap maker.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be nice because you'd smell nice, but the chemicals they used apparently were horrific. Medieval barber, which they also a lot of the time were surgeons and stuff like that, did executions, so they did a whole range of things. Next one, execution cleaner. You can imagine how gross that would be.
Yeah, no.
Ancient miners would have been so dangerous.
I'm going to notepad all these jobs so far.
Body snatcher.
What is a body snatcher?
So there's someone that dug up bodies and brought them back.
Oh, yeah.
To like,
I could have probably done that if I had a stronger stomach.
Yeah, but I mean, you're sort of invading some personal things.
Oh, yeah, they were dirtbags.
Yeah. Oh, well, they had to do it, didn't they?
Well, they illegally did it.
Yeah, that's right. Plague barrier. So they during the Black Plague, they went round with cart, and that makes me think of Monty Python. Bring out your dead. That skit. I love that skit. French beggars. Apparently, they used to mutilate themselves, their faces and things, cut things off.
To make people feel bad for them.
To make people feel bad for them and get more money, and they just looked ghoulish. Apparently, a gong farmer. So they're people that cleaned out. Yeah, this one weird. They cleaned out poo from toilets, basically, from like drop boxes. I don't know why they're called gong farmer. And the list goes on and on and on. And there's also a series that came out in 2004 on the BBC, if you want to watch that has some of the worst jobs in history, and you can actually watch this.
Yeah,
the presenter do it.
Episodes.
Have you seen that? Have you? Yeah. I remember watching it back in the day. Yeah, it's quite interesting to look at. Wrap up. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of His and Hers History, as told in the His and Hers History way. Did you have fun, Steph?
Fun, yes. No.
Debatable. So you got a new career in mind? You going to jump ship?
I'm definitely going to be a whipping boy.
Oh, sadistic. Yeah, I'm moving into the sin eater business. It's very profitable this time of year, apparently.
That one's so much better.
No, I stole it. You're a whipping boy. Bad luck.
Can we join up? We'll both do it.
Yeah, just like a scheme, a Ponzi scheme, sin eater thing.
A Ponzi scheme, like a.
I don't know. It sounded good. A pyramid scheme on sin. So this sin eater goes to this sin eater, and then we've gone way off topic. If you'd like to listen to more episodes like this, you can find us at our website, hisandhershistory.podbean.com, on the Podbean app, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music /Audible, Apple Podcasts, YouTube channel we have as well. Feel free to like and comment and follow our podcast on whatever platform suits you. Leave any feedback or any ideas you have for us. Don't forget to share with your friends, family, work colleagues, or anyone else you think might find this podcast interesting. By doing this, you can help build our community, and we can continue to provide you with some entertaining looks back at a variety of historical topics, and as always, ruin them in the His and Hers History way.
That's right.
Stephanie, what is your His and Hers History topic for next week?
So I have a story.
A story?
This week, something really bad happened to me.
Okay, please. Can we talk about now? Is this going to have to be next episode?
I dropped my
Oh, yes.
New phone.
This is fantastic.
My updated iPhone into a lake, taking a picture of my dog.
And that's why I said with the job number 1, the Nomenclator, aka the human phone, I was like, I don't like the way you treat your phones because you dropped yours in a lake and it disappeared.
Back.
No.
Fortunately, I've since got another phone.
Yes.
But that reminded me that things in history have been lost.
Oh.
So next week we are going to be looking at some lost things in history.
Oh, intriguing.
That may never be found again.
Oh.
We've sort of become a list channel lately, haven't we?
Oh,
Most of our topics have been list-based, but, we
I'll
choose
change
what
it up
we're
next
excited.
week. I'll pick a person or something, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't bring up too many bad memories of my lost
Of you
phone.
dropping your phone in the lake, yeah. I think that'll do us.
All right. See you next week.
Bye. Catch ya.